everyone and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be telling you a mini story time of when I had to do CPR on a bus.
And trying to remain so strong. I know it's good if I'm alone. I got it.
So this happened when I was on my way home from work on one of the days where I was really tired and I had done so much that day. So I just got on the bus, and the bus hadn't actually got very far when this happened. I have done training with the British Heart Foundation in how to do CPR. I've also been a St John Ambulance cadet since I was a very young little girl. I'm not anymore part of their cadets, but I was. And I have also done a year as training to try and become a nurse. So I did have some knowledge as to like how to do CPR and like things like that, but also the paramedics were called, so they instructed me to start CPR. So what happened was this lady was sitting at the front of the bus and she then had a seizure. And for those of you who don't understand seizures, I'm going to use terminology that might be a bit confusing. So a grand mal seizure is basically when all of the body shakes and the person usually goes unconscious. Whereas when you have a petit mal seizure, which basically can be anything from one limb to a couple of limbs, and not every time does a person go unconscious. For this lady in particular, she had a grand mal seizure, so she was completely unconscious and collapsed on the guy next to her, which obviously was very shocking for this guy. I remember looking over and not really realising what had happened, and I just kind of heard the guy sitting next to her motion to the driver to pull over. The driver's then come out of his cab and I've literally slammed everything down. I've grabbed my headphones out my ears, I put them on the side, I put my drink down, I've put like my lanyard down and things, and I've then gone in to help. And I've basically said to the driver, I've taken charge in this situation because although the bus driver does have first aid qualifications, he froze a little bit and was unable to take charge of the situation, whereas my brain was very much like, this needs to be done, let's get it and let's do it. So I went in and I, said to him, okay, we need to get her on the floor and we need to get her on her side because at this point she was still seizing. So we decided, I was at the head, by her head, and he grabbed her feet. We got her onto the floor and we got her onto her side, and then we got her in the recovery position. At this point, the guy who was sitting next to this lady had then called for an ambulance. The ambulance took I think about sort of 5 or maybe 6 minutes to get there, so it was very quick, and it was because obviously she was having a seizure. So we called the emergency services and the guy basically was asking me to describe her breathing. I described her breathing and he said that her breathing sounded like it was agonal, which basically means that she was gasping, taking a breath, and then she was pausing and wasn't breathing kind of how you and I would breathe normally as an in-out motion. She was like sporadically kind of breathing. So he said to me that I needed to start CPR. We need to get her on her back. So I've got on her back and I have basically just come flooded back with all the, the things that I need to do. I've got my hands on her chest in this position and I have literally sort of put it down, and I've started before the 999 operator has even kind of told me what I need to do. And I was literally going 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was saying it in the speed and the rhythm without him even needing to correct me. And I think that partly comes from the fact that I love music, GCSE and things like that. And I kind of know rhythms quite well. So it almost came flooding back to me as the sort of rhythm that I needed to be doing. If the person, you do not know them or whatever, you don't have to do rescue breaths. Because in essence, when you're pressing down on the chest, you're also compressing and decompressing the lungs. So actually they will naturally breathe at the same time. So I was just doing continued compressions. I did compressions for about 4 minutes before the bus driver took over, and he did about 2 minutes of compressions. During the compressions, so this was my first time ever having to do CPR on a real person. I had done CPR before on like the resuscitandos and in like practice. I've never done CPR on an actual person. And to put it in perspective, this lady was an older lady. She was very frail. And so it was not a very nice sensation because I was doing it correctly. And they say if you break bones, you're doing it correctly. Or if you hear them crack, not necessarily break, but they might like bend or whatever. I felt at least 2 ribs break from underneath my hands, which was not the nicest feeling in the world. But in a way, that means I was going deep enough and I was actually doing it effectively. Not the nicest sensation, but it ultimately potentially saved her life. So the bus driver has taken over, and I've then stepped aside, and I've been helping him count and keeping the rhythm and things like that, and also keeping the 999 call operator updated on the phone. The paramedics have then arrived, they have grabbed their gear and they've walked in, and then they've taken over. At this point, they've done a pulse check, and she's breathing more normally, and she is also she's not responsive, but she's breathing normally, and she's got a pulse that's a normal pulse rate. So they didn't actually need to use a resuscitation method, shocking her or anything like that. I also need to mention that prior to CPR, she was starting to go blue and purple around her lips, and she looked quite grey and things like that. So it was definitely indicating that CPR needed to be done. Then she was taken away because this whole time she was not responsive, but she was breathing and she was still had her pulse. But they kind of got her on the stretcher, lifted her up, and she was taken away breathing and alive. So I kind of feel that hopefully I played a part in saving her life. I don't know what happened beyond the ambulance or beyond her being taken off the bus. I said to the paramedic, if she wakes up by the time you get to hospital, can you wish her all the best from her bystander? And he said, yeah, of course I will. As far as I know, she was alive when she was taken away. Fingers crossed, she is still alive and she's doing a lot better now. I did post on my Instagram story, so if you don't follow me, then I did post on there to say that, I hope she's doing well. Obviously, she's one of the older generation, so she might not have Instagram, but it was just a way of me expressing my feelings and my gratitude for the fact that I was on the bus and I was able to help that situation. And if it wasn't for me, you never know what would have happened, and no one else was wanting to help. It would have been the bus driver on his own, and you never know what would have happened. I'm just so grateful that I was given the opportunity to help in that situation and to potentially save a life. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this sort of content and would like to subscribe, then please feel free. Also give this video a like so it can be spread to more people, because those likes, they're free, but they do mean a lot to us content creators. So without further ado, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in my next one. Bye.
Just like you're young again, no, don't you cry. Just get back up again.